All right. We also wanted to hit on Ben Roebuck,
Hmm.
another player out of Ohio. So I went to the trenches for the two earlier examples coming in November and January, but this is
Hold on one sec.
right off,
Um,
hot off the presses as well as
yep.
another top 15 player out of the state of Ohio, a three-star in Ben Roebuck, has committed to the Wolverines as well. So he's an offensive tackle out of Lakewood, Ohio. That's up near Cleveland.
Yes, absolutely. And this is one. I think it's again very impressive that Michigan is going into Ohio. There were some there were some people saying for some reason that Ohio State hadn't offered him, but I checked 247 Sports, and in fact they did, and in fact it was considered a warm offer along with Penn State and Wisconsin. So whoever's saying that, oh, I see. Yeah. So no offer. Okay. So it is no offer. But for some reason, warm interest. So I guess because he's in the state of Ohio, that would make sense that he would be warmly interested. But why wouldn't what just out of curiosity? And I had this in the banner, and I was like, wait, did they offer? But looks like they didn't. So why wouldn't are there just better O line prospects that Ohio State is looking at? Is that kind of the idea there?
My answer for this one would be I did a recruiting analysis a couple months ago, posted a video looking at Michigan and Ohio State's recruiting under during the Harbaugh era. And none of it surprised me. All of it was information that I had sifted through before, except for looking at how many players has Harbaugh signed out of the state of Ohio versus the state of Michigan and vice versa. And during the Harbaugh era, which obviously would span Urban Meyer and Ryan Day, Ohio State has signed 65 Ohio players and 6 players out of the state of Michigan. Michigan has signed 37 in-state players and 18 from Ohio. So it's about an 11-to-1 ratio for Ohio State signing in-state players versus going to Michigan for players. And for Michigan, it's only 2-to-1. So there's much more emphasis in one direction, Michigan going to Ohio for players. Uh, I would have said uh, at some point throughout my lifetime that Ohio's been a much better high school football playing state. I actually think that it still is, but I think the gap is narrowing. I think it's still decided. I still don't think it's a debate, but it's not what it was years ago in terms of just playing so much better football than the state of Michigan.
Yeah, it's something that I'm not surprised, of course, that Ohio State is still getting recruits out of Ohio, given the fact that when you look at it from a recruit's perspective, right? Most likely, it's not always the case, but a lot of times, if they're growing up in Ohio, most likely they rooted for Ohio State. Not always, but that tends to happen. Also, geographical proximity versus Michigan and other places, family where they're located. And so, I'm not shocked that Ohio State's still going to get a lot of people, a lot of recruits from Ohio, but this is notable that in certain positions we're seeing this, and just looking at the offer list here and looking at the 9 hard commits, you're seeing Ohio, 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 so they're making ground.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to point to the success that Michigan's had in producing offensive lines, and two of these three players are along the offensive line, and the
Hmm.
defensive line has certainly, though not an award winner, has been extremely good. The last half of Harbaugh's tenure, in particular, so I think it's significant that Michigan is finding these prospects to be worthy of a scholarship and going after. So these three players we're talking about out of the state of Ohio, in addition to Marshall, of course, which he's a no-brainer, but the other three are ranked 11, 14, and 15 in the state of Ohio. My second part in answering your question would be, if you look at Ohio State, and really Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia have recruited the best, LSU jumps in there, Texas jumps in there, Clemson jumps in
Mm-hmm.
there. And I'm looking at roughly the last 10 years. If you look at a recruiting class composition at a place like Ohio State, if they sign 25 players, they get about 5 5-stars in the typical class,
Mm-hmm.
and they only sign about 5 3-stars. And certainly one or two of them may turn out to overachieve and be a really good player, but those are generally like program players. They're gonna be backups, they're gonna be special teams players, and then that middle like 15 to 20 are 4 stars. And in the state of Ohio, each year it's become pretty um, typical for there only to be 6 or 7 4 to 5 stars. So what I'm hearing is that they just don't, after the 7 or 8 top players in the state of Ohio, not that they won't look at those guys or sign them as program players, but they're not projecting them as guys that they really want and project as starters.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and Ohio State obviously they're also looking, as you said, they're looking at 5-star talent around the country even, and so they do look at trying to get the best, especially in the wide receiver position, the quarterback position, and some of those to really emphasize that high octane passing game that Ryan Day runs. They have to find the best talent in the country to which Heartline has been able to accomplish. But in other areas, yeah, I definitely think Harbaugh has done more with the 3 and 4-star talent in the last 2 years, and versus the 5-star talent at Ohio State these last 2 years. Want to emphasize that. But even our buddy Zach Smith earlier said, Jim Harbaugh has leveled up the Michigan program, and we have to, if you're a fan of Ohio State or Penn State, look out, because this is the new reality right now. It was delayed because Jim Harbaugh, had some interviews with some NFL teams in the last 2 years, and so I think we're finally starting to see now the beginning of we won 2 Big Ten championships in a row, 2 playoff appearances. The work that Clinkscale's doing apparently is legendary, and obviously quarterback coach. Like Kirk Campbell seems to be doing a great job as well, just from reports with the Jane Davis visit, which we'll talk about. Underwood, who's a 2025 quarterback. So yeah, it's. I think the recruiting staff is getting better, and obviously, what the results on the field, those tend to shape what we get.